George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
It feels like the world is going to end. Some brave souls are trying to break the siege of Gaza because Western leaders won't do their job and won't show any humanity. Trump has finally found out the downside to having somebody slipping in and out of a K-hole in the White House. And George Galloway, for reasons best known to himself, has decided to put me in his hot seat. Welcome to the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
I'd like to begin tonight by first of all saying a genuinely heartfelt thank you to George Galloway. If it wasn't for the likes of George Galloway, independent media just couldn't possibly exist. To give you some sort of context, I haven't been on an Irish talk show since Alexa Flood, and here I am presenting a show to millions of people. Make of that what you will. I thought long and hard about what I would do with this opportunity tonight to speak to such a wonderful audience, a show that I watch regularly and connect with and comment on. I played around with the idea of just plugging my Patreon for 20 minutes straight, but I felt that George mightn't have been that pleased with that approach. And I finally settled on speaking about something that I'm struggling with, I suppose, for the last 19 or 20 months. And I thought it would be good to throw it out to the audience and see what you make of it. Obviously, me, like you, we're all watching two narcissistic babies having a falling out on the internet, on our screens all the time. And then the backdrop to this is that mass murder is being carried out in Gaza on a daily basis. Starvation, war crimes, just some of the most depraved things that personally I could ever imagine that I would see in the modern era. And the thing I'm struggling with, I suppose, is what is it about the West? Where have we fallen to that we allow these things to happen? Now, don't get me wrong, there's an amazing pro-Palestine, movement all over Ireland, all over Europe, all over America. But sadly, most people have still decided, particularly in the West, I think, to put their career ahead of their humanity and their souls. And I just wonder, what is it about us that we've come to this point where consumerism, capitalism, corporatism has just stupefied us into turning the other way when this level of depravity, when this obvious actions of inhumanity are taking place? I think it's possibly rooted in the idea of we're presented all the time with success, material success, I think, in the West. Being famous, being a celebrity, being successful always has to do with the financial. It always has to do with material gain. How often do we see stories of so-and-so from a small town in Ireland or a small town in Egypt? He came from nothing. He was dirt poor, but he worked his way up, and now he's the CEO of this big company making lots of cash, and they, posted profits of X, Y, and Z last year. I remember being a kid reading stuff like that, and even in college, and thinking, I don't know anything about this guy. You've just told me that he used to have no money, and now he's got lots of money. But I don't know anything about his soul. I don't know anything about his heart. I don't know anything about his journey. And that, to me, sums up how stuck we are in the West with this really limited, reductive paradigm of what life is about and how to be successful at life. And in many ways, for me, Musk and Trump are the personification of that mentality, and their kind of adolescent brawl that's being played out in public is a symptom of where we have come, I think, as a society. That first of all, we're also focused on it because this is the cult of celebrity, the cult of personality, and we're distracted from what really matters, which is that we are losing our souls, we are losing our humanity by not doing enough to stop this mass murder taking place in our name. I'm going to have 2 guests on my show tonight that will be able to speak further on these issues. And my first guest is from Lebanon, a country that I visited recently. You know, I had an experience in Lebanon that really, I suppose, showed me what we lack here. First of all, Lebanon is just an impossibly beautiful country. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this stunning, visually stunning, aesthetically stunning place with the most extraordinary people you could hope to meet. Unbelievably friendly. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, this looks like the type of place that anyone in the world, but particularly in the West, would want to visit. And of course it was, at one point, touted as being the holiday destination for people to go to because it's got everything. Extraordinary food, extraordinary scenery, extraordinary people. But then when you look a bit closer, you see a country and a city in Beirut, in particular, because I spent a lot of time there, that's pockmarked by war, endless Western-backed war. And it leaves you with this feeling of a deep, profound sadness that these things are going on and that we don't talk about it. We don't know about it. You kind of get the sense when you're over in this part of the world that Lebanon is just one of those countries that's war-torn. That's all we ever know about it. It's just war-torn. It doesn't have anything hugely to do with us. It's kind of over there in that kind of vague brown and black kind of Middle East world. We wish they'd just sort themselves out. But look, it's always been like that and there's nothing we can do about it. I went over to Lebanon with that kind of Western perspective of it being a kind of a slightly war-torn, terroristy type of place. And boy, was I in for a shock. Because, as I say, not only are these people the most beautiful, amazing people you could hope to meet, and it's such a beautiful country, but they also have something. I attended the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah, which got me into a lot of trouble, by the way, when I came back to the West, because back home, the perspective on any resistance group, particularly in that part of the world, is that they're just evil. They just love terrorism. They presumably just hang out in caves and they dream up ways of hurting the West, kind of like, you know, for no reason at all. They just hate the West. As George Bush might say if he were here now, they hate our freedoms. And so to see and to spend time with people who were attending the funeral of this person who, you know, if I was to go by the Western understanding, was, you know, this incorrigible terrorist, just despised the West for no reason whatsoever, an evil man leading an evil group. And yet there were 1.4 million people at his funeral. People that would be supportive of Hezbollah, but people from across the political spectrum in Lebanon. Dignitaries from foreign countries. And I was fortunate enough to be in the stadium in Beirut on the occasion of his funeral, and I felt something amongst the people. It's not the wealthiest country in the world. They don't have anything like the obsession with materialism that we have in the West. But to be amongst people who were all joined together in this moment of obvious great sadness, of course, but this unified sense of we are together under a faith for some of us, but many people in attendance wouldn't be of the Shia faith. I had many people commenting when I was there, and when I came back going, oh, did you talk to any Christians? I was talking to loads of Christians. I was talking to people who had different religions and a lot of people who had no religion at all. Lebanon is actually a real melting pot and probably one of the more accepting places I've ever been in my life. The Shia faith plays a huge role in that collective identity, without a doubt, but it's not exclusionary in any way, shape, or form. What binds people together, for me, as an outsider experiencing it, was the misunderstanding with which Lebanon is treated. I had one really interesting experience before the funeral, talking to a guy who had his daughter on his shoulders, and I've got 3 daughters, and I was talking to him about my kids, and he didn't come up to me and say, you know, when you get home now, make sure you say that Hezbollah are like really cool guys. What he actually said to me was, go home and talk about the fact that we're just ordinary people like anyone else. We don't want war. We don't want to be involved in conflicts. Unfortunately, they keep coming to our door because of occupying forces, because of Western-backed occupying forces. We're not terrorists. We're ordinary people trying to live our lives. And that really stuck with me. But to go back to the funeral for a moment, so you had this stadium full of people unified by this resilience. Keep in mind, as this is going on, Israeli fighter jets are flying overhead. I couldn't quite believe it. When I first saw them, I just assumed they were part of the funeral, that it was some sort of act of recognition or whatnot. But then someone had to point out to me, oh no, they're Israeli jets, and we absolutely expected this. They're going to fly over our sovereign skies to intimidate us and to basically disrespect us on this, one of the most important, sad, momentous days, not just in the life of somebody who would describe themselves as a supporter of Hezbollah, but in Lebanon's history, because this guy is a public figure for reasons best known to themselves. One of the main channels in Lebanon had me on to talk the night before the funeral, and there was no Hezbollah supporter in the room. This was just a massive event in Lebanon. And Israeli fighter jets flew over during this momentous occasion, and I couldn't help but think to myself, what would happen if, for instance, the Queen died, or some dignitary in Germany or France or the US, and a foreign power flew their fighter jets over their sovereign space? We would be in World War III the next day. But because it happened in the Lebanon, because it happens over there in this kind of part of the world that we don't have to think about that much, it's kind of okay. And because it's Israel, it's definitely okay. And the sense of community in that stadium that day, with this unified sense of, we are a resilient people, we know right from wrong, we know we are fighting and defending ourselves and resisting occupation and the brutality of colonial Western-backed forces. And some of us have this faith, and we have this collective common purpose. I really felt to myself a sense of envy. I thought, what is it that binds us together back home in the West like this? What is it? There was nothing I could think of that would be like that. And I don't wish to be disrespectful, but the one thing that I can understand that's a bit like that is going to Glasgow Celtic matches. But then when the football's over, you're kind of left with yourself again. And I wonder, is there something in the Lebanese, in the Palestinians, in the wonderful people of Yemen who I met when I was in Lebanon, is there something in them that the West, certainly Western leaders and Western corporatists, do we dislike them because they show us something that we actually don't have? They mightn't have the material stuff, but they have a collective purpose, a collective identity. And is that part of the reason why we hate them and why we have to dismiss them and dehumanize them as terrorists? You know, because I think that's the ultimate dismissive, reductive act in the West, to say that this group of people, we don't have to think about why they're resisting. We don't have to think about their collective spirit. We don't have to think about our role in creating the manifold problems in that region because we can just dismiss them as terrorists and job done. It's not something that we need to consider anymore. I just wonder, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts and comments on how we in the Western world have allowed 19 or 20 months of this mayhem to take place, not just in our name, but with our full financial backing. What is it about us that we can let that happen? It's something that I struggle with time and time again. And you can even see the people who have been silent in the last 20 months were silent because they put their jobs and their consumerism, they put that ahead of their humanity. And I would say even some of the people coming out now, you know, we can see a lot of people speaking out now who were silent for the first 19 or 20 months. Arguably, their motivation to speak out now is also career-based. It's also money-based, because nobody wants to be the guy or girl who denied another Holocaust. So even the motivation to speak out now from some people feels to me quite measured again. Feels to me like it's still rooted in that idea of, what am I going to do financially and career-wise in a post-genocide world? You know, even in my own country, there's just this obsession with business, with wealth, with what are we going to do with the Irish economy? And guys, I am not an idiot, right? I know we have to look after the employment sector. I know we have to work. I'm not a fall on the ground, slap him across the head, idiotic Marxist. But what price our soul, I suppose, is what I'm getting at. What price our soul? In my own country of Ireland, that likes to posture as a pro-Palestinian country that stands with the oppressed, we say all the right things. We are now 20 months into this genocide, and Ireland has done nothing of significance, nothing of substance. We say all the right things, but we still have a roaring trade with Israel. Our central bank is still involved in the purchase of Israeli war bonds. And the Israelis have come out and said themselves, this is a fundamental cornerstone of the war effort. And our central bank in Ireland is still up to its neck in that. We still have our airports. Shannon Airport regularly has US military using our airports. When it comes to the substantive action, I would call it solidarity with substance. We again, as a country, in terms of our ruling class, always put their pockets ahead of their souls and their hearts. And I ask you, what price our soul? And what will be the effects in this period of even the ordinary person saying, I know exactly what's going on. This isn't the 1940s. We've all got devices. We're all looking at our phones 24 hours a day. We can see what's going on, and yet we have chosen to not speak out, to put the fact that we need to keep our own jobs going. We say that we've got our own children to feed, and I get that, but what happens if everyone says, I've got my own children to feed? What if everyone says, I have to look after myself? What about the categorical imperative? If we all say, no, I won't get involved, somebody else will do it, then what will happen eventually is that a bunch of brave souls in a boat will have to try and get to Gaza because the Western leaders are so completely cowardly and have lost their humanity so much that they won't step in. They will not step in. And Greta Thunberg on that boat is being threatened with her life for simply doing what Western leaders do not have the spine to do. So I leave you with the thought of, what price our soul? What will a post-genocide world look like, particularly for the West that has put cash ahead of all else? Thank you so much. Come back soon for my first extraordinary guest from Lebanon.
Even though it has moved its mass murder campaign from Gaza, although there's still mass murdering in Gaza, of course, no day off for the poor refugees in the concentration camp of Gaza, but they have moved their killing fields to Lebanon. Lebanon, a sovereign country. Lebanon, a member of the United Nations. Lebanon, a country to which every other country in the world has diplomatic relations, has ambassadors in place, is being remorselessly bombed with hundreds and hundreds of air attacks, killing hundreds and hundreds of people every day, most of them women and children. Was it ever thus? As I said the other night, put the letter H in front of any Arab child and you can slaughter them with impunity. Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, they all look the same. They all are deserving of death, violent, sudden death, delivered from American airplanes, using American missiles and bombs, with British airplanes supplying the targeting information and the offending American and British reconnaissance flights flying out of somebody else's country, namely Cyprus, and the British sovereign base there.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
How you doing, folks? It's Tadhg Hickey standing in for George Galloway this evening, who has the evening off. Let me tell you about our phone numbers. If you want to call into the show, we'd love to hear what you have to say about what's going on in the world right now. Toddlergate, Gaza, etc., etc. So, US number is +1 844 944 3344. From the UK, 08081965522. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Let me also give you an update on our poll. That is, of course, Trump versus Musk. Who wins? I would say who cares, but let's go with who wins. The answers at the moment on Telegram: Trump is at 16%, Musk is at 8%. My favorite is who cares there at 76%. Total of, we're just under 1,000 votes there. On X, Trump is at 23%, Musk's at 20%, who cares is at 57%. And yeah, that's so keep your votes coming in, guys. We will keep you up to date on that as we go. We've got a YouTube update as well, just so you know. YouTube, we're at 25% for Trump winning, 12% for Musk winning, 63%. The who cares is doing very well across the board. 63% for who cares. Total votes on YouTube, 19,000 votes, and the YouTube live stream as well, pretty similar. 22 Trump, 9 Musk, who cares 69, and total votes 1,221. Without further ado, guys, I'm going to bring on our first guest. Full disclosure, the following guest is a friend of mine, somebody that I really admire. As I say, when I was in Lebanon, she was probably the one journalist that everyone would speak about and would know and would look up to. She is a political economist, a war reporter, and an editor-in-chief of MENA Uncensored, which I recommend is thriving on Twitter at the moment, or that she can tell us, unless she's been censored like myself. But so welcome to the show, my dear friend, Leila Hatoum. Leila, how are you getting on?
It's a pleasure, and I'm really happy to see you tonight. And I have to say, I mean, George Galloway, you haven't looked any better. Like, you look so fit now. Don't hate me for that.
Oh no, I'm never going to get on again now after that.
Like, it's always a pleasure. Both of you are dear friends of mine, and I look forward to welcoming you back again in Lebanon. And unfortunately, Mina Uncensored got suspended on YouTube. They deleted all of our videos. Of course, they don't want anybody to what you call chart in what you call Israel's crimes against humanity that they were committing in Lebanon and in Palestine throughout the past period. So, yeah, we are censored at the moment.
Uncensored being censored. Yeah, I've experienced it myself. Leila, I really want to just begin by asking you, I suppose, because when we hear about Palestine in the West, it's because of the scale of depravity that's going on in Gaza. But something I've noticed, and obviously I'm very attuned to it now, having been in Lebanon and having had the experiences I have had, we don't hear much about Lebanon in the Western media at all. Just little murmurings because you were under literal Israeli bombardment again this week. So for people who mightn't be familiar with what's going on in Lebanon, could you just take us through what the last week was like under direct attack again from the Israeli Western-backed regime?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know if everyone knows that, but Lebanon and the Israeli occupation managed to reach a ceasefire arrangement back on November 27th, 2024. It went into effect back then. 7 months later, the Israelis continue to breach that ceasefire arrangement on a daily basis, be it bombardment, assassinations, and basically flyovers, breaching our air sovereignty, territorial sovereignty as well. They continue to occupy Lebanese territories, and they are upscaling. Every week, they commit more and more crimes that breach the ceasefire and more crimes against humanity and against international law as well. So last week, they targeted my hometown, Burj Lebrajni, which is basically a part of Beirut's southern suburbs. And it was the largest scale attack since the ceasefire arrangement went into effect about 6 to 7 months ago. They destroyed dozens of homes. All of them are civilian facilities. For those who don't believe me, at least the Lebanese army went over and inspected 2 of the targeted areas before the Israelis hit them, because they send you what you call a warning 10 minutes before they hit. With 10 minutes, how many people you are able to evacuate an area that has hundreds of thousands of people living in it. My 86-year-old aunt and most of my cousins from my dad's side of the family were celebrating my cousin's wedding. And they were in that area. They got stuck in traffic with hundreds of thousands of people trying to evacuate at the same time. And I was sitting there over the phone, listening to my aunt crying over the phone. When I tried to reach the area, they basically, the security over there pushed me out, saying that it's too dangerous to reach there to evacuate. So people inside will have to go outside at one point in time. Luckily, we didn't have injuries when it comes to people impacted by the bombardment, but we have over 130 families who lost their homes. They're now basically displaced. And we have people who lost their means of living because they lost their shops. And the Lebanese army went there and they inspected, as I said, 2 of the supposedly areas that were going to be targeted. And they told the Israelis, they told the United Nations, they told the Military Technical Committee for Lebanon, that is chaired by the Americans and has basically the British and the French members of it, that there's nothing in those facilities. These are civilian facilities, and they took footage, and the Israelis said, like, no, we don't care. We're going to bombard it again.
It's just incredible to me to, again, to touch on something I was talking about earlier, the fact that the Israeli fighter jets flew over the stadium on the occasion of Hassan Nasrallah's funeral. And I was just trying to create in my mind some sort of comparison for if something like that happened in the West, that a Western country's sovereign airspace would be violated in that way. But can you explain both to me and to everyone listening how this is coming about in a period where it feels like the government in Lebanon, a little bit like Syria, is posturing in a more friendly way towards Israel, and yet, so for instance, we've seen the Lebanese government and Abbas talking about decommissioning weapons in the Palestinian camps in Lebanon as some sort of gesture that you would feel has something to do with appeasing Israel. So is it a case of when you battle Israel and you resist, you get bombed, and when you try and make peace with them, you also get bombed?
Well, the thing is, this is what people don't get. Ever since the Israelis were invested, or basically they were pushed into our region, we're not talking about the early 1900s. We're talking about as early as 1830s. They started creating problems for the communities around them, so they get attacked, and once they get attacked, they have the communities that send them in Europe go and support them and basically give them more weapons and basically keep them over there. So they have to bombard people around them. They have to attack people around them so they can continue to stay in a hostile environment, so that the Europeans and the Western community that send them over here will continue to send them funding and weapons. But let's put that aside, and I'll take you back to what our government is doing and the flyovers, because you were there at the funeral. I was there at the funeral. And as a Lebanese, it basically made my blood boil, not because I support the resistance against the Israeli occupation. It's a natural thing for a patriotic person to stand against the occupation. And anybody who's resisting that occupation, I will stand with them. I don't give a damn if the world basically calls them terrorists. Under international law, if 1 centimeter of your land is under occupation, you have the right to hold arms and fight that occupation anywhere, by any means possible, including armed struggle. And that basically gives a legal umbrella for Hezbollah, for Hamas, and other groups that the West is trying to insinuate that they are terrorists. They're not. It gives them an umbrella that they are legitimate under international law. So during that funeral, we were standing there where you had hundreds of thousands of mourners inside and outside the sports city, crying over their basically martyred leaders, because the Israelis assassinated 2 leaders of Hezbollah, not 1. And the Israelis sent the squadron that assassinated both men to fly over at the lowest altitude. And there was silence for about 3 to 5 seconds, because people were thinking, like, did any friendly country send their squadron to pay respect? And then they noticed that these were Israeli players. Suddenly everybody was like angry about it, and they were saying death to Israel, right? And the West only captures that moment to show that people are hostile to Israel and they're calling for death to Israel. They don't show the reason. Same thing as when they call the resistance terrorist, but they don't show the reason why there is a resistance. It's because we have an occupation. When it comes to our government, thinking that they would want to disarm the resistance at any point, and it's an easy task, I'll tell you one thing. We had resistance before Hezbollah was there. Hezbollah came about in 1985 officially. 1982, they started forming themselves, right after the Israeli second invasion of Lebanon. But we did have lots of resistance movements back in 1978 when the Israelis invaded Lebanon also. Back in 1967 when the Israelis bombarded Lebanon during their war with other Arab countries that Lebanon had no hand in. And they actually attacked Lebanon several times between 1949 and 1967. Why am I mentioning 1949? It's because Lebanon signed an armistice agreement. It was one of the first Arab countries to sign an armistice agreement with the Israelis. And the Israelis breached it dozens of times after that. And Lebanon kept maintaining self-composure over this one. We didn't have resistance at that time. We didn't have arms to fight them. And they continued to attack us, and they continued to bombard us. So without arms and without resistance, they bombarded us. And with an armistice agreement, they still bombarded us. And after the invasion, we had the resistance to stand in their face, and they still bombarded us. So whatever we do, they will continue to bombard us, because that's what an occupation does. It tries to kill you to take over your land. And when it doesn't, or when it's not able to do so, it labels you as basically as a terrorist. It dehumanizes you, because they control international media, unfortunately. And luckily, we have basically George Galloway and few honest ones out there who literally see things as they are. And when our government comes out to say that, that makes me feel so bad, because at the end of the day, if your own countrymen, the politicians, listen to external dictations to implement something that the external countries, including the Americans, want to impose on us in favor of our occupier, which is the Israeli occupation, I mean, what's left? We are screwed both ways, by our government and by the occupation itself and the international community, which washed its hands of what's happening over here. And they're just watching us, and they're just preparing about their next investment in the region. The Syrians, I mean, you said a little leaning towards the Israelis. They're completely leaning towards the Israelis. They haven't shot a single bullet against the Israelis. The Israelis took over all of South Syria, and they've done nothing. In fact, their new self-appointed president, he wasn't elected. He's a self-appointed terrorist who belonged to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and we call him Jolani, Gewlani. It's because we believe that he's an Israeli basically embedded within these groups in order for him to reach power and then give the Israelis what they want. He just said, we want peace with the Israelis. He literally came out and said that. So it's not a little, it's a lot. And when it comes to people of Gaza and the Palestinian president, the PA president, who's been PA president for the past 3 decades nearly, that person came over to Lebanon to talk about disarming the Palestinian factions inside Lebanese territories. Basically, the Palestinians are found in refugee camps, right? But at the end of the day, do you know how many terrorist groups are embedded in the refugee camps themselves? If you disarm, let's say, for example, Fatah, or the larger groups within that follow the PA, the Palestinian Authority, inside those camps, that means the smaller terrorist groups that were embedded over the years, including by the Americans and the Israelis, will take over power because they will not disarm. So what does that mean? Mahmoud Abbas Abu Mazen, the PA president, who might be able to impose his will on Fatah because he is also the leader of Fatah and disarm them, he is actually putting them forward towards being slaughtered by those smaller terrorist groups who have infested and embedded themselves inside these refugee camps.
Thank you, Leila. What a comprehensive answer. I wanted to touch on your take on the Hezbollah furore in this part of the world at the moment. Whilst the Israelis were continuing their genocidal campaign, most of us were talking about the band Kneecap for probably about 10 days at the very fact that Mochara, one of the members of Kneecap, had waved a Hezbollah flag that was handed to him during a performance. He wasn't walking down the street with a Hezbollah flag or anything like that, and he had held it up, and now he's under criminal charges right now from the British state, which is just so laughable to anybody from Ireland who knows the history of British injustices against civilians in Ireland. But I suppose we didn't hear any perspective from Hezbollah during the furore. It was just, he has done this thing, and I think we can all accept in the West that that's wrong because they're a terrorist group and they're evil. I know we had conversations when I was over there that you had been critical of Hezbollah. It's not like you were endorsing everything Hezbollah has ever done, but you had such a wonderful way of describing the nature of Hezbollah that, here it's seen as this kind of terrorist grouping in a cave plotting evil ways to destroy the West, whereas actually Hezbollah is a state within a state. Could you speak on that?
Yeah, first of all, let me just stand in solidarity with anybody who stood or stands or continues to stand with the Palestinian cause, because it's a humane cause, it's a humanitarian cause at the end of the day. When you are against an occupier that commits genocide and Holocaust against a whole population, that's dehumanizing a whole population, that is basically putting them under enforced famine, it's man-made famine, and you stand with the resistance against such a genocide, and then you get basically pushed by your own government that follows draconian laws to put you in jail for that. I don't not only feel sorry for people not only at Kneecap but also other activists who had been detained by the British anti-terrorism police or interrogated by the British anti-terrorism police. In fact, we had 2 reporters, roving reporters, Sarah Wilkinson, who's an activist, and Shamil Suleiman as well. They were interrogated with brutally by the British anti-terrorism police. We do understand the situation, and I stand with them fully, not only as a reporter, but also as a human being who understands why they did what they did. Waving a flag shouldn't be something that's criminalized. It shouldn't be something that labels somebody as a terrorist. Standing with the resistance shouldn't be something that labels somebody as a terrorist. Otherwise, I do call upon the British to be all called, like the whole political milieu, to be called terrorists for standing with the resistance against the Nazis who occupied at one point in time several parts of Europe. Charles de Gaulle is a terrorist because he fought against the Nazis who occupied Paris. And at the end of the day, the Americans who sought freedom for their own territories, they should be called terrorists for fighting over the occupation. If you look at the whole situation, every single nation that's now labeling any resistance group standing in the face of an actual occupation that the United Nations call an occupation, those countries should be ashamed of themselves. They are the real terrorists. Waving a flag doesn't hurt anyone, but putting a whole nation, 2.3 million people in Gaza under siege and enforced famine, that's terrorism. This is what the British should be basically standing against, not somebody holding a flag for a group that actually is standing against the occupation. Having said that, for those who don't know the background, I don't belong to any political party, but I do stand with what's right. And I do criticize when certain groups make mistakes, and that includes the resistance. It's not only limited to Hezbollah or Hamas or anybody else, but across the region, whenever they have something that I don't agree with, I come out and say it, and I'm very vocal about that. But when it comes to Hezbollah fighting the Israeli occupation, they are a resistance. Their flag represents a political party that's officially recognized in Lebanon. They are officially part of the parliament, and they are officially part of the Lebanese government. So the British government that considers Hezbollah a terrorist organization should criminalize the whole cabinet at any point, because we have 5 Hezbollah members in that cabinet. But at the end of the day, political games play a role. They have picked the prime minister at any point. They are supporting the president. So in that sense, they have to support the cabinet. It's a catch-22 system for the British. They cannot come out and say we are against this cabinet. At the same time, they cannot come out and say basically we are pro this cabinet. So they are put in a pickle over here because of their own actions. I don't know how to put it in a different way, but Hezbollah is not some sort of an alien group that you brought from Mars and implanted it in Lebanon. These are people of Lebanon. Seriously, I mean, when they speak about Hezbollah, it's like as if a group, you can take it out and then you can eliminate it and that's it, it's done. Or when they hand over their arms, people will stop resisting in Lebanon. Resistance doesn't stop, it's an idea. If a single person has his own, let's say, olive grove or basically fig trees occupied by the Israeli occupation at any point, that person has the right to hold arms, and he will or she will hold arms against the Israelis. The government has no say in that. Not even the resistance groups have a say on that. Hezbollah were a group of people who grouped themselves when they saw other resistance groups failing in standing up to the Israeli occupation. They trained, they accepted help from anybody and everybody who sent them aid during the period that extended from the 80s to the 90s until today. And they managed to beat the Israelis several times in their own game, despite the fact that they had lesser weapons. These are the farmers, the butchers, the bakers, the person the mechanics who actually fix your cars. Those were the people of South Lebanon who, under the Israeli occupation for nearly 2 decades, were being raped, killed, kicked out of their homes, and tortured in concentration camps. For those who don't understand the situation, I do advise you to go to Professor David Miller's basically X account, or just go YouTube it, basically The Butcher of Khiyam. There's a whole documentary for the survivors of that concentration camp, telling the world what happened to them under the Israeli occupation and those who collaborated with the Israeli occupation to torture the Lebanese in South Lebanon. So do you think people who saw their parents at any point killed by the Israelis or raped by the Israelis, they saw their homes destroyed by the Israelis inside Lebanese territories, and they decided to hold arms and fight back? Do you think that these are aliens? Do you think that they were imported from elsewhere? Yes, there are part of the Lebanese who live in northern Lebanon, or basically away from South Lebanon, who are not in direct contact with the Israelis on a daily basis. They don't feel the same as the southern Lebanese people do. But at the end of the day, you cannot go and criminalize them for wanting to fight for what is rightfully theirs at the end of the day. So this is why you have a split somewhere in Lebanon with those who are pro the Israeli camp and those who are pro the resistance camp as well. That includes the prime minister, unfortunately. Money plays a role as well. And then you do have to look into the whole situation. Every single nation that is invested in the Israeli occupation is putting money into their own groups in Lebanon to be vocal. They control the media. And at one point when you watch the whole series, yes, people are fed up with war. But when you listen to the actual people of South Lebanon, we're talking about nearly 1 million people. When they speak about the hardships they have to live under the Israeli occupation, then you'll start understanding what's happening. But you will never see it in the media because the media is invested in the other camp that supports the Israeli occupation.
So beautifully put, Leila. And I think you've probably broadened a lot of people's minds there on the idea of the terrorist. You know, it's something that, as you know, I'm kind of obsessed with, like this idea of dehumanizing people by just labeling them and that's it. You don't have to think about it anymore. So well put. So before we end, I'd just love you to talk about where people can follow your work first and foremost, but also just give us a sense of what you think going forward is the ultimate purpose. What's Israel's game here, particularly in Lebanon? What would be your fears of what their ultimate game is?
Well, my primal and only fear is that the Israelis will engulf all of Lebanon. For those who have been following on this war just for fun for the past 19 months, 20 months now, we're approaching 2 years. If you haven't noticed the badges on the shoulders of the Israeli occupation soldiers, it shows Greater Israel. And Greater Israel is a fictional place that they had literally redrawn into their religious books. It never existed in the past, and it will never exist in the future so long that there's a resistance. But it includes countries, all of Lebanon, all of Syria until parts of southern Turkey, parts of Iraq, parts of Kuwait, parts of Saudi Arabia, and all of Jordan, and parts of Egypt. If you don't call that a cancerous expansion, I don't know what is. And in that sense, for those who think that because they try to link themselves, the Israelis, they try to link themselves to Jews. Judaism has nothing to do with the whole thing. Judaism is a religion that actually abolished and stood against Zionism back in the 1970s, and they pushed the United Nations to issue what you call a decree under United Nations Secretary General Assembly that says that Zionism is a form of racism, and it's basically a discriminatory movement that is secular and has nothing to do with religion. Those Zionists not only took over the Jewish voice across the world and hijacked it towards their own interest, but they're now falsifying history to insinuate that all these countries belong to Jews at one point in time. But who are the real Jews? At the end of the day, I will just go back to science because this is what everybody believes in, right? There was this John Hopkins study that showed that 98% of today's Israelis in the Israeli entity do not belong to the Levant, which means their roots are not from this region. Most of the roots come from Africa and from Europe mainly. And you have about 88 to 90% of the current day Palestinians, their roots belong to this region, which means these people continue to live in their own territories. They changed their religion because this is what they do. They adopt into a new religion. How do you think Christianity came about? Some of them were Jews, some of them were atheists, Romans, etc., whatever you want to call them, and they adopted into a new religion. And some of them later on adopted into Islam. So at the end of the day, there were not enough, if we want to go with science, there were not enough Jews to fill in all of these territories that they claim as part of Greater Israel. And those people who are claiming that they are the descendants of the people of this region, they have zero DNA that ties them to this region, whereas the Palestinians continue to live in this territory, and they belong to this territory not only 100 years ago or 500 years ago, but thousands of years ago. There are families that extend to the past 2,000 to 3,000 years, and they can trace back their lineage. This is how attached they are to their land. Whereas basically when you look at Benjamin Netanyahu, and they've changed, by the way, those Ashkenazis and those who came from Europe, they changed their last names to insinuate that they are part of this region. Benjamin Netanyahu's last name is Milikowski. Golda Meir's last name is not Golda Meir. David Ben Gurion is actually David Gruen. And this list goes on and on and on. They adopted into our names, like Golan Heights. You have people who actually renamed their last name into Golan to insinuate that they are part of this region, but they're not. Those are purely, let's say, Russian, Polish, whatever you want to call it, Eastern European people who came over here. They fry under our sun. We tan over here, they fry. And they want to convince us that they are part of this land. Unfortunately, the world, even though that they now know the truth, they are still silent about it, and the governments have sold themselves to the devil, and they don't care.
Thank you so much, Leila. Absolute pleasure to talk to you. Let people know where they can follow your work.
Sure. I mean, I have my private account, Leila1H, Leila 1H, and I have had that since 2011 on X. And I've been vocal about every single thing that's happening in my region, trying to tell the world the truth about this region, because we're trying to fight propaganda. And this is the only way that we can expand people's mind to understand the current fighting that's happening over here. We launched MENA Uncensored last year. We got attacked several times. We tried to open our website recently, and the Israelis attacked it. And when we had our YouTube channel documenting the Israeli war crimes committed in Lebanon and Palestine, YouTube deleted it the day we posted our coverage of the funeral of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and Sayyid Hashim Safiuddin, Hezbollah Secretary Generals. And they deleted it. So we contested it. You get one strike, right? We directly contested it, saying we are covering it just like Reuters and Bloomberg are doing so, and basically CNN. And they said, no, you're supporting a terrorist organization and you have no right to access your videos. It's completely deleted now. I mean, normally they give you 3 strikes. We got only 1 strike for covering the funeral. So that tells you a lot.
My sweet Lord, I think that just sums up the censorship and the state of this world right now. Leila, my friend, thank you so much. I hope to speak to you again if somebody ever gives me a role as a TV host in the future.
Hopefully you'll work with us when we launch our channel again.
Thank you so much, Leila. So guys, we are going to go to a break at this point, and afterwards we will finally get round to your beautiful thoughts and comments and calls. So thank you very much, and come back to us after the break.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it. I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have. And I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. You know, I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Hello again, guys. It's Tadhg Hickey. If you're just joining us, you're like, what the heck's going on? Where's George? He's just taken the night off, and for reasons best known to himself, I'm in the hot seat. Without further ado, we're going to go to the lines. So line 1, we have Donna from Panama, I think.
Yes. Mr. Hickey, I'm still afraid of trying to pronounce your name. I'm afraid that it won't be right. So unless you want to give me a lesson quickly, how do you say it?
I think I will. I think it's important for people to finally know, because everyone's just like pussyfooting around it. So it's really easy, right? So it's Tadhg. So it's tiger without like the tiger. ER sound.
Yeah, Tadhg.
Yeah, so Tadhg. Yeah.
Tadhg. Well,
perfect, Donna. Thank you. Yeah, beautifully said.
I agreed with everything you said in your monologue, and I have some thoughts. I jotted them down, and I'm going to go through them very quickly, and then if you want to react. Okay. Well, in my journey, I've been a pro-Palestinian activist for 10 years. Prior to that, I just had a kind of typical attitude that most, how shall I say, non-Christian Zionist and non-Jewish Zionist people have amongst Gentiles in the United States, which is, we just want everyone to get along. We want there to be a two-state solution. Everyone needs their own state, and we want them, and it's got to be possible, that kind of attitude. I had no idea about all the intricacies of the history. And once I learned what I learned, there was no turning back. The problem is that, and I have no regrets, but most people, maybe anywhere in the world, are not willing to pay the price, not only of what you mentioned, which is career harm, even, losing a job or not getting promotions or whatever, because most people, have children to support or maybe elderly parents to support. American cities have become really unaffordable because the rents and the cost of houses are so high that you really, there are no longer any cities anywhere where there's good jobs where people can afford to live, basically, without just really, really working hard. Two-family income, really, really well-paying jobs. So that is one problem. It's not like you can, we'll just move to a little small house. No. If you have a job, if you're not out in the boondocks, maybe with your own farm or something, you have to live in a metropolitan area, and it's basically become unaffordable. So, you'll get shunned by your community. Now, I at one time was an extremely prominent and popular person from my hometown, and a kind of, shall I say, celebrity. Since I became an outspoken, I guess, radical, anti-imperialist, anti-racist, pro-Palestinian activist, absolutely not one person speaks to me anymore. So it's not only that people might lose their job or lose a promotion, right, and go down financially. It's also they'll lose all their friends, their community, their family. And, this is a very real thing that people have to consider before they speak out. In the 60s, we had hippies. We had people from upper middle class families with PhDs in philosophy leaving the establishment, leaving the corporate rat race, moving to Vermont, living in communes. Well, I don't know what happened to them. They became Hillary Clinton and John Kerry and started bombing the rest of the world. I mean, as soon as the money runs out, they go get a job, anyway. But another thing I thought of is, the Jewish Zionists have done so well in supporting so many nonprofits, whether it's opera, ballet, museums, medical schools, universities. And I just wonder, why can't some of these, it may be too late now, but why can't some of these wealthy Arab American or Arab British or Arab French people, why can't they, or why haven't they, I wonder, done the same and, put their names on every building all over the place and been part of this incredible community of support of nonprofits. I wonder if they had done more of that instead of, I think some of them support universities and mosques, but I don't see them that active in the arts and the humanities and medicine and science. And I just wonder is that part of the reason they don't have as much leverage?
Donna, thank you so much for that. So much food for thought there. Obviously, I don't have any easy answers to anything that you said, but, it struck me, like, when you're talking about the pressures that people are under to just survive. From what I understand from America, it's literally just surviving, people working multiple jobs and drowning in debt, particularly around health, which is, again, one of the supreme ironies that the Israelis live with, excellent health service largely because it's being supported from the ground up from the American taxpayer, which is one of the darkest ironies of the whole thing. But it just seems like this is the effect of neoliberalism, that it has brought the ordinary person to a position where if they don't continue doing what they do work-wise, and it's very, very hard to even keep and get a job in the first place, then they will not survive. So they don't have any time to actually think about the greater things in life and what their ultimate purpose is, where their soul is, where their humanity is. Isn't that the point of neoliberalism, really, to just break your back and break your spirit to the point where there is nothing left to actually consider? And I totally get it, and I hope that's something that I was, certainly that was something that I was trying to get across in my opening remarks that I don't blame people for not standing up, but I'm just putting out there, is it time for the West to collectively, I'm not sure how you would even do that, but is it time for us to look at our value system? That have we come as far as we can go with this idea of, if I earn lots of money and have lots of respect, and if I have X amount of followers on Twitter, and if Elon Musk retweets me when he's not in a K-hole, then I have succeeded at life. I've won capitalism. I've won life. That has brought us to the point where we've aided and abetted, you know, a modern day Holocaust in Gaza. So it's obviously not working. And to your other point, I have often wondered that myself. I'm like, where are the wealthy people, to say something really stupid and simplistic, where are the really wealthy people on our side? Why aren't they starting apps? Why aren't they, you know, if I was funded by the amount of people that people claim I'm funded by on the internet, I wouldn't be in this mess. Like, where are, like, Arabs or not, where are the Western wealthy humanitarians who can say, let's fund this, let's fund that? Like, it just doesn't seem to be happening at all. I think there's a little bit of a thing on the left with any kind of talk of money at all. Just seems like it's, you know, you're not really kind of being true to your working class Marxist roots, but ultimately we're losing the battle. If you look at the state of the two-party system in Britain and the US right now, we're certainly losing the battle. So I better shut up before I'm fired, before I'm even employed. But thank you, Donna. That was really wonderful. So your comments on YouTube, guys, just want to say your comments on YouTube. Scan the QR code now and please leave us a comment on the YouTube stream. Keep it clean and we'll read it out on air. So if you want to be read out, guys, just keep it nice and clean, yeah? Hashtag MOATS, MOATS. So that's that. Dr. L. There's a comment coming in from Dr. L. Dr. L Loveheart. I love the Loveheart. That's a lovely touch. Why is Satan Yahoo afraid of the flotilla? They're not loaded with bombs, weapons or arms, just food, water, etc. It's disgusting and disgraceful. Israel butchers. I mean, I couldn't agree more, Dr. L. I know some people on that boat. I was actually supposed to be not on this one, but the previous boat, the Conscience, but I couldn't because I had a new baby recently. She's 4 weeks old and she could actually run into this room at any moment. So bear with me if she does. But I know the people on that boat, like I know Tiago, the Brazilian lad, is like genuinely one of the most beautiful human beings I've ever met. Like, most of us don't understand, you know, guns. Like, most of us are standing with Palestine. The very, very most of us, like 99.9% are standing with Palestine because we're just absolutely destroyed as human beings by watching the carnage. So to be threatening people like that who aren't paid, who are taking it on themselves to risk their lives, because we know what the Israelis are capable of. They've literally done it before. They have literally murdered people on a flotilla before trying to do the same thing. So they have form. They're risking their lives, and to be targeted and besmirched as they are a little bit online, although it's not so much this time. I think the tide has turned, if you pardon the pun, that most rational people are certainly on their side now. And I think the Israelis fear them so much because they're in the right. The Israelis fear truth, honesty, and justice so much. And these people personify that. And I think not only should they be commended, but we should use it as a template. I was lucky enough to say a few words at a rally yesterday in Cork, and I said, you know, what if there was not one boat on its way, but 100 or 1,000? I think that might be what's needed to actually move the dial. So further comments, Phil McElhenney, good Scottish name. Hezbollah has stopped Israel expanding into South Lebanon and building settlements there. Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you know, I'm not here to defend any particular group whatsoever, but if you take Hezbollah away, as Leila so beautifully articulated, then the alternative is there is no barrier to Israeli expansionism. And I think what was really obvious from her testimony as well is that if you defend yourself against Israel, they bomb you and attack you. If you kowtow to them, they bomb you and attack you. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any winning with a genocidal, expansionist, Western-backed regime. Sheila Campbell, sadly, it didn't take Gaza for me to realise we as the Western world has lost our sense of empathy and care. That's a great point, Sheila, and I wonder that myself. I mean, from the reading I've done since I've been in college, I probably always knew that the West, generally speaking, were certainly not the good guys. If you look at the US, obviously, if you look at Britain, it's just a litany of atrocities all over the world. But I suppose when all was said and done, when the eyes of the world were on something as so obviously wrong, as so heinous, as so depraved as the assaults on Gaza and Lebanon in that period, I just felt that when push comes to shove, we would do the right thing. And I do find it quite shocking and depressing that we're this far into this horror. And there's been, no, to my knowledge, people can correct me, come in with your comments, has any major Western European put actual sanctions on Israel? Possibly Spain. I don't know if they have. I know Ireland certainly hasn't. It's talked about doing it for about a year and a half now, but no sanctions on a state carrying out this live streamed Holocaust. It's extraordinary to me how gutless we've become. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Kwaku Oasu Antwi in the UK says the Western countries have destroyed their credibility by supporting Israel blindly. The rest of the world see their behavior to be pregnant with racism. I couldn't agree more. That all their masks are off. I think if you allow what's happening to Palestinians to happen, and if you think it's okay, then what you're basically saying is their children. I'm channeling Ben here when I say, do their children not cry? Do their mothers not cry? Do they not feel the same pain as us? Do we only muster enough compassion for ourselves and our family? I think this is connected to the consumerism and the individualism that we've been talking about all night. Do we just care about ourselves? I think if we just care about ourselves, we actually don't care at all. And I think the browner the skin color, something that I've mentioned in one of my sketches before, the more people in the West generally shut themselves off. They siphon away any compassion or empathy they have, just maybe for their immediate family and friends. Rachel Thompson, ironically, most modern Zionist Jews are less Semitic than the people they are ethnically cleansing. Yeah, that's very well put, Rachel. So will we go to, I think we were going to go to another caller at this point. Line 2, Terence in Corby. Are you there, Terence?
Mr. Hickey. I am.
Beautiful.
I think if the Countess Markievicz were alive in Lebanon, Miss Hatoum would be at a war reporters actually reporting on the truth, the facts, and nothing but the truth and the facts. Glorious to hear that. My point to you, Mr. Hickey, is two questions. One is, when you look at BRICS and following the money, of course you have to follow the money. Now, my point is that BRICS will not work. Iran and China working together will work, I think. Russia are too compromised. They've got Trump as Lenin would have called a useful idiot. They've got him compromised over everything. And one final point for your opinion on is the fact that why don't Russia sail a boat with food into Palestine? Why doesn't China sail a boat into Palestine? Now, we can say how bad the West is, and we all know about British justice. That was shown up in a court in Dublin the other day when Mr. Adams made him look like fools for lying and impugning somebody's integrity. Whatever you think of him, British justice is a joke. Iran and China will work. I think India is too compromised with money. With the West, Saudi Arabia the same. I'd like your opinion on, maybe why doesn't China and Russia sail boats with food stacked to the rafters? Why is it always the little people that have to go out and be made or blown up by the people that don't care? It is all about the money. Mila boycott.
Mila boycott to you, Terence. Beautiful to hear a bit of Gaeilge there. That's our own native language there in Ireland, guys. Check it out. Great country, great language. It's the $1 million question. There was even talk, I think, all of us are trying to make sense of what's happening online. For a while, there was talk that the Chinese were going to even airdrop humanitarian aid to Gaza, and that turned out not to be the case as well. It's something I have wondered myself for a long time, why Russia doesn't, why China doesn't, and why it's left, as you said, to Yemen. I think it's worth having a shout out to Yemen at the moment. I think if what I was talking about earlier in terms of our humanity being lost and our souls being lost, then surely Yemen are giving us an example or a template of how to regain our souls and our sense of right from wrong. arguably the only country showing solidarity with real substance over the last 20 months and putting everything on the line from a people who have already been besieged and brutalized by Western-backed military groups in Saudi Arabia, to put everything on the line to show their solidarity with substance with Palestine. It's actually quite moving, I think. But to get back to your question, I suppose the American empire, though it's wheezing, though it's on its last legs, as wonderful authors and writers like Chris Hedges has illustrated in his books, his incredible catalogue of work over the last many years, it's still going, it's still strong, and perhaps the Chinese and the Russians are playing the longer game, thinking that if they intervene right now, that it would be an assault to the Americans, who they ultimately hope to do peace with and end, in the case of the Chinese, the trade war, and in the case of the Russians, the proxy war. Do they all put money ahead of morals? Arguably, yeah. And I'm not somebody who just hammers the West and feels like, you know, China and Russia are a panacea because I'm an anti-imperialist. I mean, I'm against imperialism everywhere, and I'm advocating for doing the right thing and being soulful and being human under all circumstances. And I suppose the answer to your question ultimately is, if they were going to do something brave and strong and intervene, they would have done it by now. So you have your answer there. They are obviously putting their own diplomatic, financial, economic interests ahead of saving lives in Gaza. It seems to me, you know, it's something that we'll touch on with our next wonderful guest later, but it seems to me that Palestine and Palestinians, they're always the one who slips through the cracks. They're always the one in any diplomatic situation where they lose out as everyone else gains. And I think that is the great, great tragedy. They don't quite fit into any box in that kind of post-imperial war games and diplomacy games. So thank you so much for your comment, Terence. I know I didn't answer it. I wish I had the answer myself. Guys, I want to tell you about MOATS donors. Big thank you to this week's top donors who visited the MOATS.tv website. Jason Higgins, Sylvester Dean, give yourselves a big round of applause if you're at home, guys. Richard Rogers, Mark Peter Edwards, and Carl Sco. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Thank you so much for donating this week, guys. Please do become a MOATS donor tonight and give what you can to support the show. Check out MOATS.tv. I cannot sort of egg that on anymore, guys. The show like this is an alternative, as Terence, our previous caller, just called out. Where would you hear Leila expressing the true nature of resistance, the true face of resistance, if she was to speak in that way in any mainstream program, certainly in the West, in Ireland or Britain? You know, they'd shut her off after 2 seconds. She wouldn't get on in the first place, let's be honest. Independent media is where it's at. And if we're going to stand up to Western hegemony and all the problems in this world right now, we need a strong independent media. So please support this wonderful, wonderful show that's giving schmucks like me a little bit of a lift up as well in this unbelievable sea of censorship that we're all in, for literally showing a little bit of humanity. Support the show, guys, please. So thank you so much for that, guys. I think we are about to go to another one of our breaks, and we are back after that with a wonderful, wonderful guest from Gaza, somebody who is now living in my country. Please, for God's sake, don't miss him. Enjoy your break, and I'll talk to you soon.
I don't believe that the mainland European countries give a toss about Britain. And I'm certain that the United States would not sacrifice itself for Britain. That's why I say Britain is completely marginalized. As for the Trident missiles, of course, if the United States, which has dual control over these missiles, gave permission for them to be launched, of course, they would incinerate Russian cities. But what good would that do us? Because we'd all be dead, including the people that fired the missiles. You feel me?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the show. I haven't been giving you any updates on the poll. I'll probably never work in this tone again. So I'd like to work on that right now. So in terms of the Trump versus Musk, who wins, if you care to know the answer. According to Telegram, Trump's at 16%, Musk is at 8%, who cares is at 76%. Total votes there, 883. Over on X, 23% Trump, 20% Musk, 57% who cares. On YouTube, we're looking at 25% Trump, 12% Musk, 63% who cares. And on YouTube stream, guys, Trump's at 22%, Musk 9%, and who cares 69%. So I am very, very happy now to move to our second guest this evening. This is a young man that I had began following online, as probably a lot of us did, as the genocide began in Gaza. To my knowledge, he is 22 years of age, young journalist from Gaza. I probably have a special vested interest in speaking with him now because he has made my country his home. He lives probably just a couple of 100 miles away from me. As I say, I've just had another baby, so I haven't had a chance to actually meet him in person yet. So now I'm going to actually just meet him online, which is a bit odd. And I hope to meet him in person soon. Abubaker Abed is a Palestinian journalist and commentator. And my friend, I would like to welcome you to the mother of all talk shows. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for inviting me over here. And yeah, I'm good. I'm trying to be good. I'm very happy to talk to you. I wish it could be in person, but yeah, this time online. Maybe the next time is going to be in person.
Yes. We'll speak in person soon. I have so many people in Ireland who have already met you and are sending me pictures of you and them together. And Matt Kennard, I suppose, one of the few actual proper journalists left in Britain, a person I admire so much, told me to get in touch with you as soon as you were coming over to Ireland, and he spoke so highly of you. But I'd already been following your work. So people who don't know your work, first of all, Abubaker, can you just give us a sense of what you were doing in Gaza before the genocide, what your work was, what you were involved in? Paint a picture for us before the genocide began in your hometown.
Well, I think in my opinion, people have to understand first and foremost that there has always been horror in Gaza, even before the genocide began. So Gaza has not even been bleeding since October the 7th, but prior to that, and that's one of the most important points that people have to be aware of. At the same time, we, as young men in particular, were deprived, were bereft of hope even before October the 7th, because the unemployment rates were exceptionally high, tuition fees were very expensive for us, and the living conditions were absolutely terrible, and they've become nightmarish once Israel started or launched its genocidal campaign in the Gaza Strip. So before the genocide, I was mainly focusing on football, and I was a football reporter. I was trying to enjoy myself as a football reporter because that's the passion that I had since I was a kid, and that's how I learned English, to be honest. And I tried my very best to grow, but at the same time, I was also reporting on the sporting tragedy in Gaza and in Palestine, even prior to October the 7th, because there has always been, or there have always been, crimes by the Israeli military against the sports in Gaza and around the West Bank, including the ban of movement towards restrictions that have been imposed on Palestinian athletes all across the occupied territories, and even many times before, the destruction and the attacks on football facilities in both the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. In addition to that, we have seen many times the settlements, the illegal settlements that have been built on football and sports facilities in the West Bank. But FIFA has never carried away about these war crimes or these crimes committed by the Israeli army over time. So I was more of a football reporter. I was a football reporter with a lot of passion and with ambitions that I really wanted to achieve, because I was born into the womb of suffering, into the womb of horror. My life hasn't been just about October the 7th and this ongoing genocidal campaign by the Israeli apartheid forces. However, we've lived through 4 wars before: 2021, 2014, 2012, and 2008. So since I was just 6 years old, I was living through wars. And the first war that I lived lasted for more than 51 days. It was in the winter, and more than 5,000 people were killed in Gaza. So this kind of concentration that people are thinking about, that the Palestinians have been suffering since October the 7th in this kind of context, mustn't be taken for granted, because people have to understand prior to that. And I want to reiterate this very important feeling that I had once I set foot on the Irish territories, on which I'm so proud to be. Is the fact that I have realized that I haven't lived ever in my life, and I'm not 22 years old, but I'm a 1-month-old baby right now, or a month and a half old since I arrived here, because what I lived was beyond imagination. So that's what I was doing before October the 7th.
My God, that is powerful, man. So you say you never lived before except when you reached Europe, effectively.
Anyone.
I remember hearing you say before that you all you knew was death. Could you say more about that? All you knew was death. Death was something that characterized your life.
Because I survived 4 previous wars in Gaza. I could have been killed in any of them. I could have been killed in the past 500 or in the 560 days that I lived in the besieged territory. So I'm very lucky and very fortunate that I have survived all these massacres perpetrated by the Israeli regime over time. So I'm very lucky and consider myself very lucky. And it's the same story. Ask anyone. It's not all about me. Ask anyone who has fled Gaza. Ask them, how do you feel right now? They will tell you that they haven't been living at all in my life. I'm here in the country, and I'm showing my friend through the phone when I go around in the country, and I'm seeing the beauty, the green fields, the nature, the waterfalls, everything about that is a dream, something I've never seen in my life. And he's telling me, Abubaker, like, I can't believe that you are still in this world. I thought this was another world, that this was on Mars, or this was on another planet. So you can just imagine what it means to be outside this country. This is my first time. People have to know this is my first time outside Gaza. And I cannot believe the magnitude, the amount of luxury people are having here, the food, the amounts of food, the abundance of food everywhere, and everything here is available. You cannot be deprived of anything. You have entertainment, you have food, you have water. So there are no bad days. Since I arrived here, I never complained about anything. So people don't have to complain about anything. And I'm sorry to say this, but people here are very spoiled, so they have nothing to complain about at all. So that's what we need to realize and understand. That's what we need to really realize at the moment, because this is the symptom of the ongoing Israeli, or the ongoing presence and existence of the Israeli apartheid regime for the past almost 80 years, that has deprived us of everything. I cannot see my homeland. Now I left outside Gaza, and I can set foot on the Irish territories. However, when I drove past occupied Palestine, particularly near Jericho, the Dead Sea, and close to the mountains of Palestine, I know I was never able to set foot on the ground. I was never able to relish or to behold the beauties of my homeland. So you can imagine, but here in a European country, which practically doesn't have any connections with Palestine, although because of its beautiful people that have shown extremely or extraordinary support and unwavering support over the course of the genocide. And before that, I'm not able to go and see my homeland, but here I'm able to do that. So you can just imagine the Palestinians are being marginalized, and we don't want to be dispersed. We really don't want to be dispersed at all. We want to be together. We want to go back to our homeland. That's what I'm trying to tell people all the time. So it's a very agonizing decision. It's a very heartbreaking time for me. I'm here without my family. I've left everything behind. I don't know if I'm going to go back to my home country. So you are talking like, it really hurt me. I'm not blaming you here, but it really hurt me when you said that he is in my country. You can say that this is my country. I can say the word my and add to its country. I cannot do that. I cannot say that. I don't have the latitude that you have at the moment. So this sort of little details that, or probably the intricacies of life, are beyond what people are thinking about, because people, as I told you, have everything. What factor should really push them to think about others? So there's a huge lack, in my opinion, of common humanity among people and among the ordinary people. The people have become unbelievably selfish, and the Gaza genocide has approved of that, because it's not enough. I do appreciate the protest. I do appreciate what people are doing, but at the same time, it's not enough. Governments have to listen to their people, and this is a regime that cannot be lifted or ended except by this occupation, cannot be ended except by military force. And that's what we have concluded from the ongoing genocide. We have been doing everything in our power. The Americans have been the staunchest in its support, or in their support of the Israelis, and nothing has changed that. We need a military force to stop Israel. We need a military force to stop the genocide. How many more of us should die? How many more of us should be maimed? How many more of us should be amputated? I was reporting from Gaza's hospitals. I never visited. No, I'm not going to talk about the hospitals. I'm going to talk about the streets. There is no, and I'm very responsible for what I'm saying, there is no single street in Gaza that you can walk right now. And that's an experience that I had in my time during my time in Gaza. There is no street that doesn't have any amputated people. At least you will find 3 to 4 people, particularly children, amputated, 2 limbs, 4 limbs. They are suffering. They have suffered life-changing lives. Children are talking about their dreams to have, or are their limbs going to grow? Are their lives going to be restored? Are their lives going to be flourishing again? These questions, children are dreaming to have a bit of food or a bite of food. That's real. I was at the hospital last time, the last reports that I had from Gaza. Children, all the ICUs at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital only had children, 5 children. One of the rooms that I was in, the ICU rooms, there were 5 children under 11 years old, one with full body burns, another with an acute lung contusion, and a third one with a spinal cord injury, a 4th one with fractures, complete fractures of their body. That's insane. That's what people are not talking about. And this is given the fact that Gaza's hospitals are absolutely defunct. They have been decimated by the Israeli military over time, and there are no hospitals working right now. And Al-Aqsa Hospital has been was for the first time just attacked by suicide drones a week ago. So the continuation of attacking, or the continued attacks on Gaza's hospitals will deteriorate or perpetuate the current situation, and will make it the worst ever. So there are details behind the news that people have to understand, and that's what I'm telling people. Feel our pain. That's my message to them.
That's so beautifully put, and I couldn't agree with you more about how selfish and individualistic we have become. It's something that I was talking about earlier in the show anyway. So please tell us more about that, because as you know, there is a lovely mutual kind of thing going on between Irish and Palestinians, but we're learning so much. We are learning so much from our Palestinian friends about like what really matters in life. And I really mean that. And at the risk of I don't want to, unnecessarily re-traumatize you, because I'm very aware I have many Palestinian friends, and I know I have some sense of what you're going through every single day. And there's days where some of my friends want to talk, and there's other days when they don't want to talk. If I'm re-traumatizing you in any way, just tell me and we'll talk about something else. But there is a moment in your life where you have done this journalistic work that you were kind of thrust into. You had been a sports journalist, you're doing this work in Gaza, and because you're doing it so well, you become a target of the Israeli regime, and your mother comes to say something to you. And it reminded me of what a Palestinian friend said to me at one time, which was, there are no good choices for Palestinians. There really are no good choices. And your mother brought attention to the fact that you were becoming a risk for not just yourself, but your family. If you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Mothers, know what is going to happen. Mothers are not drunk. My mother, specifically in the last 2 weeks before my departure, felt that the house was going to be targeted, felt that I was going to be hunted down by the Israeli military. And her point could be approved because there were intensive smear campaigns against me and death incitements by big Israeli media personalities over these 2 weeks, claiming that I was a Hamas operative, although I never held a gun in my life. So when she came to me, when she saw me, she didn't want to compel me to leave Gaza at all, because she knew that I was very committed, that I allotted my time to giving everything to my homeland, because it's my homeland. I never wanted to leave my homeland. I literally needed, and I wished I could die just sacrificing my blood and my life for the sake of my homeland, because Palestine needs us, Gaza needs us, and that's what we want to learn, and that's how we want to live. We don't want to live a luxurious life. We don't want to live high in the hog. No, we don't want to live this life. I never want this life where I am at the moment. I can go and buy whatever I want, but I cannot find a moment of joy. So my mother, when she saw me reluctant, specifically in the last 2 days, or in the last 24 hours before making a decision and telling the Irish embassy that I wanted to leave, she came to me and said, look, I have to be very honest with you. Do you think you're going to be happy if they target you here in the room and they kill you and your brothers and us? Will you be happy with that? And I said, of course no. So she continued, or she added, look, you are a harm to me and the family, and you must leave. We don't want you anymore. So you can just imagine how traumatizing this is. This sentiment, or this phrase from my mother that she told me, was something I will never forget in my life. It will haunt me forever. I cannot really, wherever I go, I still think about this sentence from my mother. I know that she didn't mean it, but she wanted to help me. And I honestly never cared about my safety. I honestly never cared about myself, because as I told you, I really wanted to die for my homeland. And I was able to leave Gaza 3 months into the genocide, 4 months into the genocide. I had that long-standing offer to flee Gaza many times, multiple times, on multiple occasions, and several occasions. But I always said no. But this time I was forced to do it. I was forced to make such a terrible decision, such a very, very agonizing decision that is still on to me. So what else do you have in this life when your mother tells you so? What else do you have in this life when you are unable to hug your mother? There are children here, with all due respect to the Irish people, there are children here who right now complaining about their parents, and their parents are dictating them to do this and this. That's absolutely insane. I'm seeing youngsters and children, they are quite fussed, or they're quite annoyed by their parents. I don't know why. Like, I'm telling them, I wish I could have a mother. I wish I could have a father to hug, a brother, a sister, whomever. Like, I do want one of my family members to be here, but it seems totally unfeasible, unfortunately, because the crossings are being closed, and I got out of Gaza under the most unimaginable circumstances. I was interrogated. I was interrogated by the Israeli military. I was checked, and I was going to be targeted by them at the Israeli border, except the intervention by the Irish embassy. So these circumstances that I'm detailing to you right now, are absolutely very, very hard to absorb. But here I am trying, but there's nothing, believe me, it's very traumatizing. I know it's very traumatizing, but right now here in Ireland, there's nothing that traumatizes me more than seeing an Irish man drinking a Coke or going to a BDS target company or shop here in Ireland, like Tesco and like Galaxy, Mars, whatever. So there's nothing that traumatizes me more than seeing an Irish man drinking a Pepsi or a Coke. There's nothing at all, because they are drinking our blood. And it can't, like, if there's a rule, if this country is very, the government is still, it still needs to do more. But if there are right rules here, those people who are drinking cocaine all over the globe, they shouldn't at all. I wouldn't be happy at all. The Irish people would never be happy. A century ago, if I came during the British colonialism and the British occupation of Ireland, and Coca-Cola was funding the British regime to colonize Ireland, and I was coming here drinking Cokes in front of the Irish people, they would never accept that. But yes, here we are as Palestinians seeing Irish people, a lot of Irish people, and the companies and the shops trading with Coca-Cola and other BDS targets. That's the most traumatizing that I've ever had since arriving here.
Here. I couldn't agree with you more. Something I was going to ask you as well is to do with the fact that I know, listening to you in other interviews with some of whom friends of mine who have spoken to you, and I get the sense from you as well tonight, you've struggled with malnourishment and bronchitis and, you know, physical effects of doing what you have been doing in Gaza. But I never ever get the sense from you of being a victim. I get an unbelievable sense of defiance in you in spite of the trauma and in spite of the sadness. And I remember you saying before as well that you're passionate about holding the people who have done this to you and your family and your people, holding them accountable. That's something that's very, very important for you. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, definitely. I will never forget anyone who has justified the killing of my people. I will never forget or forgive the people who have given a pass to the Israeli military for their crimes against my aunt, whose family has been wiped out. I will never forgive the people who have been justifying and giving consent for the Israelis to continue and speed up its genocide in Gaza, and for the starvation they are applying or they are inflicting upon my people right now. I'll never forget them. So I will try my very best to hold them accountable for what they have done. I will never back down. I will never back down at all. I will continue doing my work here, and I will continue exposing them and exposing those major media channels, including RTE and including the Irish Times, for the many times they have really done the very disgusting work they have done, trying to justify the ongoing starvation after 600 days of live stream genocide and well-documented genocide, after 600 days of the immolation of babies and of the stark starvation of babies and children, and the rage of entire families from the several record. I don't know how those people have the courage or have the sense to just justify what is going on. So these people are not afraid or are not worried about their humanity, but they're more worried about their wages, because they are afraid that their wages could be docked. And that is one of the things that we must be aware of. So when someone doesn't care about their humanity, but they care about the wages, then they don't have the goal in their life. They don't have anything to do in their life. They're no longer humans, and that's what we need to do, because it's not important, because those media channels are gullible and they are very credulous, because they believe everything coming out of the lying mouths of the Israeli military and the lies that have been debunked since the start or the outbreak of Israel's genocidal war on the Strip. And we've seen that, and I myself debunked many materialize. I remember a couple of months ago, a month before leaving Gaza, when an Israeli tank shelled a UN compound, and I was there in the place, and that shell flew over my head as I was in the car and I was moving to Khan Yunis in the southern parts of the Strip. I remember that, and I saw the shell. Then the Israeli military published a statement saying that they were not responsible for shelling the UN compound, and this shell killed an international humanitarian and injured 5 others. Then I went in one of the interviews saying that no, that this was an Israeli shell, and 2 weeks later the Israeli army admitted that it was them who shelled the UN compound. And many times before, about the Israeli-backed or the Israelis-backed criminal gangs and looters, I also exposed them many times and risked my life, because to verify anything in Gaza is to put your life on the line, and that's what I was trying, because there was nothing more important to me than just exposing the exploitation and the profiteering that is happening in front of my eyes. I refuse to live in humiliation. I'm always a very dignified young man. I'm always very hopeful, and I always see hope. I never lost hope, and as I said all the time, I wish I could live the whole genocide. I wish I were in Gaza right now talking to you, but these are the circumstances that I was plunged into, and I didn't have any choice except that. But I always wanted to do something. I always wanted to risk my life for my homeland. I never wanted to back down. We're not those ones who have backed down, because we are the indigenous people here. We are the ones who have the spirits, who have the hearts, who have their hearts, their sweat, and everything about their lives, their memories. Even if they are right now buried under the rubble, we can really recover them, as we have recovered the bodies of our loved ones and of those of our families who have been killed and murdered by Israel. As we have been able to recover and pull out their bodies from under the rubble, we can pull out our memories, we can relive again, we can rebuild Gaza, and we can march together until the liberation of a free Palestine. We will never back down, we will never surrender, because that's the reality. Palestinians are so hopeful. I'm so hopeful. The young generations will never think of surrendering. We will continue to hope, we will see hope, and we will continue to endure, even if the entire international community has let us down. And that's what we need to do. And since we are talking about those international media outlets, we need to remind people that if those media channels had some heart or some humanity, because they are of course soulless right now, and they've been always soulless, trying to justify the killing of innocent children and women, they will be held accountable. But if they really did their job, this genocide would have been stopped since day one and since the first days. But there has been, because this kind of journalism, and it's not journalism, it's propaganda unleashed and written by those complicit and very complicit and unforgivable media outlets, has made for the Israelis to continue, or has given the consent for the Israelis to continue their genocide, which is still ongoing, and we are still seeing right now. And we shouldn't be fooled by the kind of repairing or washing that is being right now done by those big figures in the Western media, or the Western media channels, that they're trying to wash their hands from their complicity over time. We shouldn't be fooled by that, because they will never be forgiven, whatever, no matter what they are doing right now, and they will be doing, because they have been complicit. They have been liable for the killing, the mass murder and starvation of people, because I lived through 2 starvation periods before, and that's the 3rd time, and I left almost 1/3 of the starvation period that is going right now. And that's one of the reasons why I left, because there were times I couldn't stand on my feet, and there were times, imagine that there is someone right now who is justifying the killing of my people. How would you want me to forgive them? How would you want me to forget them? They are simply as equal as those who are committing the war crimes. There is no difference between the two, because when you give a justification and you give the pass to those people to commit these war crimes, they are simply unforgivable. And that's why we will continue, and we are made of stern stuff. We will never be beaten. And I promise, and I'm seeing that as I'm talking to you right now, that Palestine will be free. We will never. And we will see hope in those people who are trying to fight for humanity, who are trying to save their humanity.
Inshallah, brother. Inshallah. Abubaker, it was an absolute honor to speak to you. And I spoke at the start about the fact that so many in the West have lost our humanity. And listening to you speak there, I feel like you embody what we have lost. You could teach us what we have lost, but I just wonder, do we deserve it? I just wonder, do we even deserve that
There are
instruction
some
from you?
people who deserve it. There are some people who deserve it. There are some people who haven't stopped since day one, supporting us and showing us the kind of solidarity, and they have risked their lives. There are some people who are keen not to lose their humanity, and we appreciate these people. We see hope in them, and that's what I always have said in Gaza, that to seek out beauty is to be a human. To seek out hope is to be a human. These people share this hope with us, share this beauty with us. And no matter what this kind of destruction or what scale of destruction is in Gaza right now, because Gaza is gutted, the people are gutted, we are devastated, we're very devastated by what has happened, but the compass in Gaza and Gaza will never be lost as long as we have people like you, those people who are not stopping at all, and they are very keen and cannot really stop at all, just trying to tell us that we are here, but that they are behind us in every step of the way. That's why we continue to endure, as I told you, and our endurance is just a light and reflected by your hope and by your support. That's what people have to understand. That's why you deserve it. And I know that there hasn't been much enough. I know that it is your governments who are responsible and liable for what is going on. I know that you're cursing your politicians for what has been happening, but hopefully that this protest and this wave and this global solidarity and boycott campaign will really pay off in the end. And we need the military force to stop Israel. We need to make sure that this apartheid regime is going to be dismantled, because as the Irish people here saying, those on the protest and the demonstrations, they always say it, and it's very clear, and I agree with that Gaza is not occupied. Palestine is not occupied. It's just physically occupied. But the people around the world are mentally occupied, and they have been mentally occupied for the past 80 years. So the liberation of Palestine will not secure only the territorial liberation, but will also secure the mental liberation of the entire world. That's what people have to understand.
Abubaker, thank you so much for your time. Please, guys, follow his work online. What an extraordinary human being. It was an honor to speak to you. Take care, brother. See you in person soon. Okay, guys. That was. I hope you felt every bit of that as much as I did. We are going to. Are we going to go straight to the lines, guys? Or are we going to take a break? I think we're going straight to the line. So we have Jay in Florida. Jay, are you there?
I'm here. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Jay. How's it going?
Good. Congratulations on your newest newborn.
Thank you, Jay. What a sweet thing to say. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's always a pleasure to see you. I never knew who you were until I saw you on this show. Sorry to say, but it's always a pleasure to see you on the George Galloway show. And great to see you.
That's why George Galloway. That's why we need him. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know that I'm exactly pushing back on a thing. I don't know that we've lost our humanity. But I would say that a lot of people, especially those here that are in the West, who are mostly Christian, don't really understand what's happening. And by that I mean there is no such thing as Judeo-Christian. And although we've all been brought up with that idea, and I'm nearly 60 years old now, it's been a long time coming. If anybody takes the time to read through the Bible, which I have, and, Catholic school and all that nonsense, you will find that there's a very definite division between what is Judeo and what is Christian. The Judeo version of the Old Testament is very, smiting and very punitive, and they have this thing about this sevenfold retribution of justice. And sevenfold is an interesting number. It's fun to do on your calculator if you hit 7 times 7, then hit equal. 7 times, will come up with a large number. And that might go a long way in describing what the extermination is all about in the Old Testament view of things. Now, you come up against the Christians. The Christians have come up against this in a very hard, debilitating way right now. And it's been very difficult and very painful on a personal level to see that this idea of turning the other cheek and forgiveness doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. And, well, I guess I would say that. And, you know, what you would do with something like that, it doesn't take away the anguish of watching these people inside a barbed wire cage being bombed and burned and starved. It won't take that anguish away, but it may help you understand. Lastly, I would say that this whole action, the Israelis, well, you know, whatever. But this whole idea of this bombing, burning, and starving of people inside of a barbed wire cage is just downright un-American. What do you say, Mr. Tadhg?
Thank you very much, Jay, for your comment. It's people being bombed and starved in a cage, I would say, is very un-Christian as well, in terms of my understanding of Christianity. I was brought up a Catholic, and my understanding of Jesus was that he was somebody who always stood with the oppressed. Other people would describe him as an insurrectionist, a revolutionary, somebody who would have always, I think, sided with those who were downtrodden, and certainly wouldn't have been part of any empire like the US empire right now. In fact, he would have been challenging any empires as he challenged the Roman Empire directly. And I feel like your point about the Judeo-Christian aspect of things, it has certainly become a very necessary, a very useful construct in the modern era to try and create sides whereby the Judeo-Christians are usually white, usually in our Western parts of the world, and we're unified against this kind of collective other, which is usually brown or black, usually in the Middle East, and usually associated with violence / terrorism. And it's this clash of civilizations idea, and it's very, very, very pervasive, and it's very toxic. And it's why we get into this kind of Manichaean thing all the time of goodies and baddies. And I think if the last 18, 19, 20 months have taught us anything, that whoever the good guys and the bad guys are, we are certainly not the good guys over here in the West. So thank you so much for your comment, Jay. Just to remind you guys, anybody tuning in late, that it's Tadhg Hickey. I am him. I am he, standing in for George Galloway tonight for reasons best known to George's self. I think we are going to go to another line now. We are going to go to Jamie in Malaga. Jamie, are you there?
Hello, Tadhg. Yes, I am. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, really, for all you're doing for Palestine. I've followed you for a little while, not quite as much as George Galloway, who's a big hero of mine, but I certainly was aware of you, and I like what you're doing. There's so many different things going on at the moment, but my main reason for calling was that I'm praying that the Freedom Flotilla, Madeleine, will arrive safely in Gaza as an example to break the blockade, to show to the world we have to stop this genocide. We have to allow humanitarian aid, medicine and food to go into Gaza and save all of these people who are being persecuted under our watch, which is the most disgraceful thing. So I've been watching that, very, very closely, certainly the last 10 days, watching the boat getting closer and closer and closer. I'm very worried. It's obviously got some important people on board. The most well-known is Greta Thunberg, but also there's a French MEP, member of the European Parliament, on board, Rima Hassan, and also a well-known actor, Liam Cunningham. And I just mention those because if people are familiar with those, it's a sort of reference or a platform. But these are 12 people who are volunteers who are going there unarmed, purely risking their lives, and the risk to their lives is very serious, risking their lives to try and break this blockade and bring humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. So I pray every moment of the day that they'll arrive safely. The risks are very high. I noticed that the Israeli Minister of Defense, whose name Israel Katz, has said, I have instructed the IDF to act so that the hate flotilla Madeleine does not reach the shores of Gaza, and to take any measures necessary for this purpose. I mean, what a vile thing to be saying or considering doing. So, as I say, I pray for them. I pray for their safe arrival. Another thing that's happening as well is the March to Gaza, which is starting on the 15th of June in Cairo, in Egypt. It's very well organized. If people are interested in it, it's called the march2gaza.net. And it's got a good web page, and it tells you all about it. I mean, there's people from different countries participating. So I could go on. There's lots of things, but I appreciate the time is running out. So Tadhg, thanks very much. I'll add a couple of things if you want me to, but otherwise I'll stop there.
Jamie, thank you so much. Yeah, you did a sum up of those two important actions beautifully, which saved me doing it. I was hoping to mention both towards the end as well. I mean, the flotilla are, I mean, that's literally the beating heart of our humanity that's left at the moment. And I think for me, it's something I'm working on at the moment, a little video. I feel like for somebody to describe that as a hate boat or a hate whatever is evidence of a kind of a psychosis. For me, it's Zionism and its supporters right now are in the midst of a psychosis for me, because you couldn't, unless your perception of reality was distorted and irrational, you couldn't see what they're doing as anything but the embodiment and the personification of love. So yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. MOATS big donors tonight again, guys. Just a big shout out to tonight's top donors who've been onto the MOATS.tv website since we came on air. Mike L. Beanie, Robert Clegg, Tony McLeish, Trevor Talbot and Colette O'Neill. Please check out our new MOATS.tv website. Click on the Donate Now button anywhere on the site and donate whatever you can afford in any currency you like. Please support independent media, guys. It is our present, it is our future, it is our lifeblood if we want to challenge all those things that we have been speaking about in the show tonight. I think we're running out of time, so we're going to go to another line. Line 1 is Ish in Wisconsin. Can you hear me, Ish?
I can hear you, Ty, and you are doing a good job filling the big shoes of George.
Thanks, Ish.
I am actually calling to answer a question, a trivial question maybe, but you had a caller. She questioned in wonder about why those rich Arabs don't help the Palestinians, and I kind of have an answer for her. Those rich Arabs here in America, American Arabs are as good as Americans anywhere, But I'll come back to that later. But in the Arab countries, especially the Arab countries around Palestine, occupied Palestine, are people who have been made small after years of maybe humiliation, terror from their own government, and they are made to be small and afraid. Now here, Americans, whether they are Arabs or not Arabs, and I'm sure in the continent, as 19th century people say it, in your part of the world, are also becoming the same, are becoming afraid of losing a job, are becoming afraid of getting kicked out of school, and maybe even afraid of being stigmatized. And maybe we are slowly becoming as small as those rich Arabs, So that is my answer to that lady. maybe slowly we becoming, maybe in the future, or maybe already, I don't know, people are even afraid to think, of something. Maybe they get caught by the thought, maybe they will think the algorithm is going to find out. That is my answer to that lady. But I want to say also one more thing. We are not all of us can go on a flotilla, and those brave activists are great. God bless them, and I hope they make it. I hope they stay alive, to be honest. But we all of us can do something. Like, I am not a man with the great means, but I do help. I give to UNRWA. I give to people in Gaza as much as I can. And I, of course, help and support shows like George, MOATS, and other people who speak the truth. And, for example, Jewish Voice for Peace here in the U.S., Code Pink in the U.S. So we all can do something. Maybe we can't be, none of us are superheroes. And you don't have to be, none of us are Gazan, basically. None of us are superheroes. None of us are Yemeni. So we can't be as brave as those guys. But, or we can do a little bit. Even resisting the little thing, like boycotting. Like, I used to love Pepsi, but now every time I buy my generic brand,
Yes.
We all can do something, and this is, I'm not, and this is always a struggle. You mentioned Jesus before, and we know that Paul and the other disciples who later became the leaders of the church condemned Jesus when they caught Jesus. We know the story. You're going to condemn me. They condemned him 3 times, right?
Yes.
And the women who were supposedly not women of the highest class, or, they are the one who stayed with Jesus.
Correct. Yeah, thank you, Ish. I think we're going to have to leave it there. I've run over time. Thank you so much for your comments, though, Ish. Very, very thoughtful and thought-provoking, I should say. So we'll go to our final comments from YouTube, guys. Abu Swala Musafir speaking about my friend Leila Hatoum, very eloquent and truthful. Little Maisie reiterates Abu's feelings there. I've learned a lot from this lady. Thank you so much, Leila. Big Basil Abubaker, a literal Holocaust survivor. It's funny you should say that's literally what I was thinking about as I was speaking to him. It was like, this guy is living history. And again, something he's touched on in his other interviews as well is he didn't choose this. Life is unfair. He didn't choose to be in this war, this perpetual war zone, and now a genocide zone. Jack Klugman, damn, Abubaker looks so much healthier in a few weeks compared to when he was in the gigantic Bergen-Belsen. Yes, that's so true. Even just a few weeks where he has an abundance of food, as he put it himself, an abundance of everything. Rupert 199, let us not forget Conor McGregor was running for president, and then we found out he supports Israel. Still, Ireland does support Palestine. That is certain. You're among friends, Abubaker. Guys, you've no idea the amount of love he is getting in Ireland, and I know it's probably small consolation to have to leave your family, but he's being absolutely smothered in love in Ireland. Finally, if you missed part of the show, fear not, you can download the MOATS podcast from tomorrow morning, guys. And this week, the podcast has been in the top 40 of the Netherlands, top 100 in India, the UK, the so-called UK. We don't say UK in Ireland. And Hong Kong this week. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen right now, and you can listen to the weekly podcast via the moats.tv website. And once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review and rate it too. It helps to grow the podcast and more people will know about it. The poll is now closed, guys. Can I get a drum roll, please? Here are the results. Trump versus Musk. Over on Telegram, 16% Trump, 8% Musk. Who cares? 76%. X, 23% Trump, 20% Musk, 57% who cares. YouTube, 25% for Trump, 12% for Musk, who cares, 63%, and YouTube stream, 21% for Musk, 21% for Trump, 9% for Musk, and 70% for who cares. I've lost my mind. Guys, thank you so much for listening to me. If you would like to follow me, I'm at Tadhg Hickey on YouTube. I've been banned from Instagram, but I have a backup account on there. I'm on Patreon, and I have really been honoured to sit in the great man's hot seat tonight. I've had a marvellous time, I have to say. It's been a wonderful experience. Thanks for listening to me rabbit on. And keep supporting independent media. Keep an eye on the extraordinary souls in the Gaza flotilla boat right now, doing what Western leaders should have done all along. Love to you all. Keep fighting. Free Palestine. And take care of yourselves.